At least 7 people have died in heavy storms which have hit parts of KwaZulu-Natal. The eThekwini municipality has suffered major damage. 70 houses there destroyed, over 100 partially damaged. Residents of Hangwelani in Durban are asking government to relocate them to safer areas. This after their houses were flooded during devastating storms earlier in the week. Hangwelani is only one of several areas that have been affected in the Durban metro. KwaZulu-Natal MEC for Public Works and Human Settlement, Sipho Nkosi, has reassured affected residents that government is working hard to provide resources there. So the story that we're just talking about vis-a-vis that damage in KwaZulu-Natal has highlighted the need for the design of smarter cities. And we're going to discuss this now with Professor Hangwelani Magidimisha-Chipungu, who is the chair for Inclusive Cities at UKZN. We're going to look at how better town planning can help mitigate the impact of natural disasters. Prof, thank you very much for your time and welcome to the program. The future certainly looks bleak if we do not plan properly now. We'll see cities ceasing to exist. We may even see increasing numbers of climate migrants. What are the warning signs right now that we cannot afford to ignore?
Good evening, and thank you very much for the opportunities. It's quite clear and evident that right now the issue of climate change and natural disaster is on the rise, and we cannot continue as if everything is normal. It cannot be business as normal. We have to up our games in terms of in the way in which we design our cities, in the way we design our residential areas, and in the way we actually plan how to mitigate this hazard before we can actually lose more lives. So it's quite clear that the issues around hazards, they are not about to go back to natural hazard, but we just have to be prepared.
Yeah. So share a quick story with us, and because I think it connects all of these convergent concerns in quite an eloquent way. The Quarry Road settlement in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal, actually in a place where I grew up, Reservoir Hills, which exemplifies this problem you described. Just share with us some of the attributes of what this all represents.
What's going on here is there are a number of factors, and it's very difficult to just pinpoint and say this is where the problem is. But it speaks to our ability to deal with what we call pre-disaster management in order to reduce disaster, and of course our strategies in terms of post-disaster. So we are expected, ideally in a normal world, to focus more on pre-disaster, in other words, in our prevention strategies and mitigation strategies and preparedness. And we have to start asking ourselves that, are we prepared as a country to actually face any hazard or natural hazard which is coming in the near future, because we don't know when this is going to happen. Now, and this is where the issue around planning fall into this phase of pre-disaster. Now, the question we have to be asking ourselves is that, are we designing cities which are resilient enough to able to withstand any weather of this nature? And this talks to the issues around the infrastructure. We're talking the issues around the human settlement. We're talking issues around how do we maintain our infrastructure? What infrastructure is in place? How do we observe building code standards? Are we observing building codes? And this is very key to everything that we do. I mean, in South Africa, what we're supposed to be actually doing is to enforce building codes. And are we doing that at the moment?
Yeah.
What we have right now are the codes seated somewhere else, but anyone can build willingly, and rightfully so, because some of the people, they just cannot afford the cost of a professional person to give them advice. But what other mechanism do we have in place to cater for those who cannot afford? That's one thing that we should be talking about. The other one is the issue around the education. How much people do they know about mitigation strategies that are in place? What is it that we have in place that enables people, wherever they are, to react on their own at the individual level? Have we invested on that? Do ordinary South Africans know what to do when they're hit by disaster? And how do I then help my neighbor if my neighbor is hit with a disaster? How do government respond? Do people know who to contact in the government sector or private sector to assist them? So those are the serious issues that we need to be having as a country. How do we move forward from here?
If there's time, I want to touch on, the reality of planning in a context where there's a lot of change, talk about rapid urbanization. But the reason I picked out of your writing the Quarry Road example was you have a situation where people move. Eventually, those settlements grow. They're on a floodplain. You write in your piece that, you have officials and law enforcement even who come through these areas regularly, but there's no attempt made to arrest the development and the expansion of these communities, which results in danger for them, of course, when it rains, high volumes of water and coverage are experienced, and at the same time, quality of life and the fact that they live in uncertainty. It relates also quite nicely, Prof, to what's happening in Gauteng and the settlement of Alexander Township and the UKZN River, which is also where people put their homes, which, of course, when it rains heavily, those homes are at threat. How do we get the message out to those kinds of communities who are also in a situation of desperation and, just trying to set up home wherever they can?
You see, what we have in this country is a serious crisis in terms of land allocation, which is strategically allocated. People, they want to be closer to the city because that's where opportunities are. But we do not have adequate land to cater for them. Now, what people end up doing is that any piece of land which is open space, they are going to occupy it, regardless of the consequences thereof. Now, what I was arguing in my article is I'm saying that it's not like these informal settlements are growing overnight. If it does happen, it's on very rare cases. So one person go and find a piece of land, they occupy the land, and they call their friends, they call their family, and it becomes a community. Then 10 years, 15 years down the line, then we're starting making noise and say, no, you are in the wrong space, you shouldn't be here, and the list go on. So what we are saying is that we need to enforce what we call a land use management, developmental control. We need to respond as and when things happen. So before people they get settled, because it's become very hard and expensive to remove people who have been in the space for over 10, 15 years. Thank you very much, Prof, for giving us, just a snapshot of some of the interventions that can be made to mitigate the impact to human life if we can, if we are able to plan better. UKZN's Professor Hangwelani Magidimisha-Chipungu talking to us about the impact of climate change.